My name is Gladys Godinez, host of the Courageous Mujer podcast. This season, me siento muy excited to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month by focusing on our cultura, our identity, and our accomplishments by getting to know 6 wonderful Latinas throughout the state. Courageous Mujer podcast celebrates Hispanic Heritage Month is sponsored by Humanities Nebraska, Dr. Katie Whites, and United by Culture Media, an affiliate of the Lexington Community Foundation. We know that we're just scratching the surface, and we will continue to embrace, support, and celebrate each and every single one of you, from Scottsbluff to Lincoln y desde North Platte a Omaha. Feliz mes de la herencia hispana.
Jalapenos, strawberry, broccoli, just a variety of things. He used to work in the fields. I remember, there's pictures of me as a bald child out in the fields in a big red dress, just probably a year old, walking in the fields where they worked, him and my mom. And he eventually moved up to being a manager, at one of those farms and working on a tractor. Right until before he moved to Nebraska, he didn't want to leave his job. He liked his job. But my uncle, may he rest in peace, my late uncle, my mom's brother, um, had heard about this new job, this big job that, make money quick, and moved to Nebraska. And he bought a ticket for my dad, a bus ticket for him, even though my dad didn't want to come up here. And they moved up here in 92. It was them two, and then they brought us. But they worked at IVP, what is now Tyson. So meatpacking plant. Back then it paid a little better probably than farming, but it was a lot of hard work. And it still is.
Yeah, it still is 100%. So let's, I like to elevate and celebrate. What is your mom and dad's name? What's your late uncle's name?
My mom's name, she passed a little over 20 years, but her name was Isabel Montes Velasco, and people probably know her as a tamale lady because we used to sell tamales here in Lexington. I was a girl with, knocking on the doors, selling tamales. My dad is Isidro Montes Ortega.
Saludos to Don Isidro. I know he's watching. So yes, tamale lady. It's so interesting because I was a little Tupperware lady, little Tupperware girl. I was little Tupperware, little Mary Kane, a little bit of Jafra on the side,
Just a little bit of everything.
Just a little bit of everything, just trying to make it work, here in the United States. Very cool. So little Carmen comes to Nebraska, and your dad didn't want to come, but he found employment here.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you when you move from California to the state of Nebraska?
As a little 7 or 8-year-old girl in California, knowing that I was moving to Nebraska, a state I had never even heard of, didn't even know where it was on the map, telling my teacher in first grade, I believe, first or second grade, it was second grade, telling her, hey, I'm moving and I want to party. So they started looking on the map where it was, and they started celebrating the move that I was going to make with my family here. We moved here, and it was a bit of a shock. I mean, California, you don't see snow. We wear shorts and short sleeve, and that's that. We come here in October of 92, a few months in, and it starts snowing. Our neighbors, because we used to live in a trailer park, and neighbors would kind of look out their window and kind of even come out the door and be like, what are you doing? You're going to get sick. Because we were barefoot, shorts and short sleeves outside playing in the snow. It was new to us and it was fun. So yeah, it was a little bit of a shock, but becoming from being an extroverted kid to being an introvert coming to Nebraska. So that totally changed who I was in Nebraska.
Yeah. I can just picture you in shorts in the snow. And
little skinny girl, long hair. Yeah.
Just because we also moved in the winter. We moved via train right before Christmas. And I was in total shock in regards to the snow, in regards to the temperature. It was freezing. We did not have a coat, and what I did have, it was a thinner coat, but it was like leopard style. I was not a leopard style 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old. So it was very interesting. I still have a picture.
Good memories.
Yeah, for real. The memories that we have. Yeah. So then you came to Lexington, Nebraska. Your dad's working school. What did school look like for you then? Elementary, high school?
Yeah, I was at Bryan Elementary, so I was a Bobcat back then. And when I was in school, I was very shy. And then I started being called, the whole show, Carmen Sandiego show, Where in the World. Well, I started getting called that every time, and I didn't really know what they were talking about. And I would just let people cut in line, when we'd go to lunch or whatever. And I was very, very shy. I started getting involved because they had a music program. So that kind of was my outlet for me to just express myself, was in music. I started in choir and then moved up into honor choir in elementary. I was a very studious girl. I hated being late to school. If I was a minute or two late, I'd cry, and my mom and my brothers and sister were, why are you crying? We're just a minute late. Like, you don't understand. It's like, I don't like being late to school, and I want to be in school. And I loved reading. I was, they'd give me an assignment and I'd write the whole book probably just to get the right answer. So I was very, very studious girl. Middle school, that kind of my love for music transferred into middle school. And I did in middle school. We had a newspaper. It was a new kickoff thing, a new startup, where our English teacher decided to start like a little newspaper. It was called News as You Like It, or As You Like It News, or something like that. And so I was one of the writers, one of the reporters on there, and one of the editors too. And I just wanted to be on the know, what's going on here and there. And I was an annual staff, which I was taking pictures for the yearbook. I was probably the only student back then to get awarded all 2 years for my annual staff work. So I have those trophies at home, which was really cool. But music was my love. It was my passion. I was in the choir. They eventually took me out to do the Sing Around Nebraska program, which was pretty amazing back then. I just loved doing it. And we got to sing different parts of Nebraska, especially in this one big concert that we did. And we had to learn the music in one day to perform it that night. So it's like a lot of pressure, but it was fun. That was me as a kid. I love music, and till this day I still love music, but in a different way. Moved to high school. Transition into high school was a little challenging. My mother had passed right before I started my freshman year of high school. I was 15. The day I turned 15, she passed. So I lost a lot of the friends that I had in middle school or growing up. I hung out mainly with the white crowd, and some, Hispanics. But I saw myself where I don't know why, but I related more to the white population than the Hispanic. I don't know why, but that was me.
I went through the same phase. It was interesting. Yeah. And I don't know how much we want to go into it and like dig it up as to what happened, what was what was going on. Mm-hmm. But there was different Latino groups within the Latino or Hispanic community, mm-hmm. and Hispanic community. So it was interesting where you felt welcomed and mm-hmm. then how you felt you needed to be, or it was just a transition in high school. Mm-hmm. And cultural identity is really what we're going through, is figuring out where we belong. Yeah. So I'm not surprised because we all go through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a weird, because middle school was all, the white crowd. That's who I hung out with. When my mom passed, I still remember it to this day. I went to sit for lunch with my normal crowd, and they got up and left. It was just kind of like a quick transition switch, from going from one group to another, because the Hispanic group kind of took me in, knowing or hearing what had happened, because everybody in town was like, oh, that's the girl that lost her mom on her 15th birthday type deal. Mm-hmm. And so I hung out with that's where I got more involved in the Hispanic group, and I was still in music, got involved in string choir. My sister-in-law back then, Stephanie Owen, she kind of encouraged me to get involved in the clubs that she was in, one of them being Pep Club. And I was wanting to get into more leadership roles in high school. My academics kind of dipped after my mom passed, but I still wanted to be that leader, wanted to have those leadership skills. And so I got involved in student council. I got involved in everything. Soccer is where I met you. Mm-hmm. So soccer was one of the activities I got involved in, mainly to lose weight, because when my mom passed, I gained a lot. Till this day, it's kind of hard to get rid of it. But yeah, I lost, 25 pounds after my first year of soccer. And that summer I wanted to be on varsity because I was on JV. And yeah, I mean, soccer and music were my thing back in high school.
And such a big piece of you, left you mm-hmm. when you were 15, quinceañera, sweet 15. Mm-hmm. And it just going through that transition and going through that big moment in your life, it had to be hard. So shout out to Stephanie for giving you that a little bit of strength and support as to how not overcome, but just at the very least try to come out of a very dark stage in your life. Mm-hmm. So soccer, yes, we met in soccer. Yeah. it was interesting because I mentioned that our soccer coach didn't know soccer, so he used to show us videos, and that's how we
We learned.
attempted to learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were not very good, but we did our best. We definitely tried, and I think we built friendships through our soccer program. And to see it now, right?
Yeah.
All of the work that Rebecca is putting into Unifoot that has developed the soccer teams now
Yeah.
within the school systems, I think is a beautiful thing, and it's such a thing that we can hone in with our community, with our parents, because my parents used to go watch football and they still do watch football,
Yeah.
so it's really cool to be able to relate to them at that level también.
Yeah, my dad wasn't really into soccer. I don't ever remember him going to my soccer games because he was working. But because I learned to have that passion for the game because I was playing it. That eventually I got him into it because I would be at home when USA or Mexico were playing,
Yeah.
and I you could just see all my passion into the game. And there was one time where I threw my sandal because I was so mad because they didn't miss the goal. Like, oh my gosh, why? And my dad's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, you don't understand. They could have done this and they could have done that.
Yes.
And you missed it. So yeah. Crazy.
I think my kiddos, I mean, I just watch TV and I like everybody to be quiet while I'm watching TV because I like to focus, But when I do watch sports, like soccer is the one that I'm like, yes, know. And then the kids are like, what is happening, Mom?
Yeah.
I don't do it often. I should probably do it more, but I love to see our kiddos now and how it has developed and the history that we made, because we made some history while we were being some of the first to play soccer here in our community for the school.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned music.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about music and then how it helped you or how it inspired you. And then you graduated. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Music has, since in California, they didn't have the music program, when I got into it here, it grew. That passion was just there. I've always loved being somewhat center of attention, and music was that, for me, because I was be able to be on stage and really hone in that skill that I wanted to craft. And so with me being selected for different groups and things like that, it just kind of propelled me, like it pushed me, even motivated me even more to continue music. So when I was in high school, I got into swing choir, honor choir, and just regular choir. And then I participated in all these competitions for singing. And I was at one of them. I actually won second place at one of them, which is, hey
yes.
I didn't expect it. I'm like, hey.
Yes.
So that was great. And so after that, I remember Mr. Davis, Mr. Otero, Mrs. Sullivan. I mean, they just kept pushing me taking me out of my choir class. And, they had a good reason why. And I appreciate them now for it. But at the time, I was not very happy.
Right. It was your favorite class.
It was my favorite class. I wish they would have taken me out of math or science or something, but it was always music. And so, but yeah, music has always been there. It helped me be on stage. I think looking back, it really helped me know how to be on camera and not be shy, and get that little extrovert Carmen back to who I am. I mean, I'm still shy, but not as much as I was when I moved to Nebraska.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about why Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Otero, and Mrs. Sullivan, Mr. Davis took you out of choir. So we're going into high school, we're graduating, and then you're going to have this awesome music career, but they saw something different.
Yeah, my goal, every time they pulled me into the office, senior year, and they're like, hey, so what are your plans after graduation? I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a singer. And they're like, what's your plan B? I'm like, that is my plan A and B and C. That's all I want to do. I want to be a singer. I can't sing a note now because I haven't trained in a long time, but it's just Mr. Otero was probably the first one that started taking me out and wanting something out of me. He took me and another group of Latino students out and talked to us about this full ride scholarship at UNK to become a teacher. And as soon as he said teacher, I'm like, I'm out. See you later. Don't want to be a teacher. That is definitely not where I want to go. My focus was on music. Then when Mr. Davis started doing that, taking me out of class, and Mrs. Sullivan as well, they really wanted me to be something more. They wanted me to do something more because they knew music was, it's not a more established goal. I mean, it is established goal, but it's not like something that is a for sure.
Right.
It's just kind of hit or miss. Whoever wants to. When I was in high school, I even told him, like, we've already talked to a record company. This is my goal. We talked to Selena Quintanilla's family. My dad and I got the courage, and I told him, I really want this. And he's like, wait, let's just call. So we called. We talked to the Quintanilla family, and we were like, hey, this is kind of my dream. What do I need to do to get there? And they're like, well, you need a demo. You need to send us a demo so we can see or hear your voice and see if you have what it takes to get there. And so I asked, because I didn't know what a demo was back then. And they're like, well, what's a demo and what all do I have to do to get it? And they're like, well, it's going to cost about $2,000, if not more, to create a demo. And it's basically just you singing a song, and you send it to us, and we'll see. We'll call you if it's good. Never got there because $2,000 was a lot of money for me.
Yes.
I was working part-time jobs and trying to help my dad maintain the household, because when my mom passed, before she passed, she told me that I would have to assume her role in the house as being the oldest woman. Basically cooking, cleaning, taking care of my brothers, taking care of my dad, making sure they had what they needed. And that was the role I had to play. So when she passed, I assumed that role. I even had to get a job behind my dad's back because he didn't want me working. He needed me at home. I was like, I can do this. After soccer practice, I would go to work for a couple hours and head home and be home just in time to cook, clean, and do everything I had to do. So after all of that, Mr. Davis and Miss Sullivan said, we were thinking that maybe you can go to UNK. You'd be close to family, but you need to find something that you could do. And I'm like, I just want to do music. And they're like, okay, well, I was enrolled in the music program. That's something that I got into at UNK, but they basically told me, you know what, we've already sent, because they wanted me to fill out the application to be admitted. First of all, they sent the fee for the application, which was $25 at the time, and I still hadn't sent the application in. And they were like, what is the holdup? Like, you need to fill this out. And they sat me down. They wouldn't let me out of their office until I filled that application out so they could send it. So I was kind of forced into going to college, which I'm completely grateful for. Once I was still very into, I'm like, oh, I'll fill out the application, whatever. I got the welcome papers. My dad gets a call from UNK, like, hey, we're just wanting to confirm if Carmen is coming, to classes this fall. My dad's like, yeah, she'll be there. And I'm like, what? I'm not going. Like, I don't want to go.
He didn't get the memo. I'm still going to be a music star. Yes.
Yeah. So that was the goal. And those plans changed the first week of college.
Yeah. You just gave us a lot. So I just want to, I don't know. I want to dig in just a little bit more, just in regards to the support you had and just reflecting back, to Mr. Davis, Mrs. Sullivan, and Mr. Otero. And I shared this with, I think it was Beatriz, that I remember Mr. Otero, and I don't remember the principal's name at that time.
Gordon, probably.
Yes, Mr. Gordon. They both walked me down the hallway, and they're like, Gladys, you can go to community college instead of university, because that's what I wanted to head to. And I didn't understand why they were telling me why I should go to community college, and it made sense now, pero estaba bien enojada then, I was super mad. I was like, how dare you? I can go to university. I can do whatever, like I can't say these words. So I'm really good at what I do. So I'm going to continue to do it, and it's just interesting reflecting, no? Because you were definitely going towards a dream that could happen, right? I'm not closing no doors on no dreams, Carmen. Yeah. So one of these days, one of these days, you may be singing for me somewhere, and I may put it out there somewhere. But just having that reflection of, it did help me. Now that I see it, let's talk about that a little bit more. How do you see it now? What happened from there that they're like, no, you need to go to college, and then now that you are a college graduate?
Yeah, I mean, looking at it back then, it's just like I was very adamant in my own set of ways, but I think God, kind of uses people to steer you in the way He wants you to go and where your life is meant to go. And I think he put those people in my life for that reason. Otherwise, who knows where I'd be? Who knows what my life would have been? Because singing, I mean, you hear about all these stories that it's not easy. It's not easy getting into news. It's not easy getting into the celebrity status that all these musicians have. It's hard work. I know a lot of musicians that are still struggling to get where they want to go, to be top A-list celebrities, or musicians, and they're still working hard. It's a long journey. So I'm very thankful for them to have guided me forcefully to the way that they guided me.
Right.
Otherwise, I'd probably still be waiting tables. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and we'll dig in a little bit more into your career and how that has impacted your career now, because you've done so much for not only our community or state, but throughout the nation. So I definitely want to dig into that a little bit later. So then you go into college. You said 1 week. Let's talk about that 1 week. What happened with the music program out of UNK?
Yeah, I got the letter. I even have it. I probably still have it now because I tend to save a lot of things. But I got the letter of being accepted into the music program at UNK. So I was like, oh, I'm set. I was going to all these classes. Then the department chair for the music program pulls me in, does a vocal test and everything. And then he pulls me into his office, puts in a CD, and has me listen to it. And then he's like, if you can't sound like that, which was an opera singer, a soprano. For one, I'm an alto. I don't sing soprano. And he's like, if you can't sound like that, then I can't have you in my music program. You're going to struggle a lot. And I asked him, like, I don't want to sing soprano. I don't want to sing opera. That's not the music I want to go into. I want to go into, the Mexican regional music of my culture. Like, that's what I want to do. Right. Not opera. Opera's like, I know I can't hit those notes. And so he's like, well, if you want to continue, fine, but you're going to struggle. I just want to let you know. And so my dream completely changed. I knew I wanted to be on camera. Like, that was my thing. I knew I wanted to be in that kind of platform, because I not just wanted to do it for my dream, but I wanted to be able to have a platform where I could help people. So that was the whole intention behind it. So I start going through the, catalog. Back then it was like a big, thick book of the majors that you could.
Yes, I remember that book.
So it wasn't digital like they have it now. Yeah. You'd have to go through a book, look for what classes and careers you wanted to go through. So I started going through it, and I, looked up broadcasting, and I'm like, oh, I guess that's TV. I'll do that. I go into the department for broadcasting or communications, and I speak to Dr. Keith Terry. And he's like, do you know how to play a CD player? I'm like, yeah, who doesn't? Like,
hello.
Yeah. He's like, all right, we'll enroll you in a radio class. And I'm like, I'm like, okay, whatever. So I do radio class, not knowing what I'm doing. I was a radio DJ for a year, 2 years. My first year was because of classes. The second year was because they asked me to come back because they liked my show. And through all those classes, obviously, I had to take news class, how to report, how to, media, everything, everything that had to do with media. So that's where my love for news, I mean, looking back, like I mentioned, As You Like It newspaper in middle school. Yeah. Then annual staff. I had something, it was building up, and I didn't even know it. So even it was just God's path, I guess, guiding me to where I needed to be in broadcasting. So that's kind of where it kind of switched from music to news.
Yes. And, just because I like to, let me go back to that professor in music program and just say UNK was not equipped to be able to receive, embrace the Latino culture within their music program at that time. And if anything, if anybody's listening, our hope is that for future musicians that want to go into regional Mexicano or whatever their goal is, we have mariachis, we have salsa, merengue, reggaeton. I mean, we have a diverse set of musical skills as Latinos and Hispanics that our music programs within these universities can definitely embrace that, especially if you're trying to seek more Latino and Hispanic students within your programming. So very interesting. Hopefully we tap into something there. I don't know.
Hopefully
Somebody's listening,
light bulb goes off.
Yes. Hello. And also encourage high schools, because high schools also have great band programs. But if we can tap into our music, man, can you imagine?
Yeah.
It'll be beautiful. I know Grand Island has a mariachi now, which is really cool. Lincoln también, I think they have a mariachi
That's
too.
amazing.
It's really cool to see it and to be able to embrace your culture within something you love. And you can continue. You continue to grow, and your school will celebrate you, as well as you will continue through a university program and possible career. Porque quién sabe, nobody knows the potential that we have as individuals.
And I feel like with those limitations, if you don't have those programs, you're limiting the individual,
Yes.
where they want to go and what they can achieve. And I think that's where, in a way, I was a little bit limited when I started off.
Yeah. Yeah. So. No, I agree. We had, Chris and I met with a professor out of CCC, and he's super smart. Doctorate degrees like no other. And he said they kept telling me I couldn't. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't have a mentor. And what he could be, the potential that tenemos, that we have, and those people that limit us because they don't see it yet.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. We'll put that there somewhere. We'll come back to it some other day. But then you went into broadcasting, which is really cool. You did so much throughout. I love that you connected it, to middle school and high school Carmen, the little Carmen that didn't see it coming, pero now you're here, doing big things in broadcasting and news.
Yeah.
So you're in college.
Yeah.
What is happening in the university? Did you find yourself a little bit more, with broadcasting, that with school? What helped you throughout your university time? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, college was a bit challenging at the beginning. Like I mentioned before, like my role had changed from being a teen to taking on this different motherly role for my family, kind of a caretaker for them. And that continued into college. We talk about how challenging, how different the challenges we face as Latinas versus those that are not Latinos. We go into college, at least from my experience. I went to college. I had to be at my dorm at a certain time for my dad to call and check up on me. If I wasn't there, he'd have a fit and be like, "Where were you? What were you doing? And who were you with?" And so eventually he got me a cell phone, but it was a little challenging the first year. But yeah, weekends I would go back home, take care of my dad, cook, clean, and make sure my sister was doing good in class. And my brother, he ended up dropping out, at school. But it was just very different for me. And my roommate, Nayeli Quintero, I thank her for the advice she gave me. Although there was a certain things I wish I could have said no to, because she said, if they invite you to a party, if they invite you to an organization meeting, if they invite you to anything, just say yes and go. So that kind of helped me. I took her advice to heart, and I went to a lot of things, and I got to meet people, and that's where I met up with you again, and I knew about the Hispanic Student Association, and I got involved in that. And eventually Ladies Mix. Ladies Mix was a huge outlet for me to really express that music that I hadn't been able to express because that one department chair. Because once he told me I couldn't do music, I shut it down. I didn't do it anymore. But Ladies Mix was kind of the open door for me to continue expressing myself. And I loved it because there wasn't just Latinas. It was African American, Asian, everything. And I loved it because we weren't just doing Latino music. We were doing every single type of music. I remember dancing to Asian music, which is very difficult to do.
Yes. We even had belly dancers. Do you remember?
Yeah. It was just
that was hard too. Yeah. I couldn't figure out the toe thing.
No. And so it was amazing. We got to learn a lot culturally, on our own about it. I remember going to college and there wasn't very many Latinos. I think that was when we started seeing an increase. Because I remember you've talked about it where when you were in college, there wasn't really any Hispanics.
Yeah. And it just, the ability to, I think you and I have the same type of feeling. We're going to give back. We're going to go back to our
Mhm.
community. We're going to tell and share and say you can do it. So we
Yeah.
had the opportunity to go to our high schools, to different high schools throughout the state. We had the opportunity to start a conference for high school students. We
Mhm.
had ladies mix so then we can embrace our cultura with music and community and mujeres from
Mhm.
all types of shapes and sizes and cultures. And then you also, out of that, you started a sorority.
Yeah, it was something that basically wasn't really something I was planning on doing. But it wasn't just me. We were a large group of women, not just Latinas. We had Asian, everything, white, and came down to 7 of us. And we have a Native American, we have an Asian, we have a white, Latinas, that created the first Latina-based sorority on UNK campus. And I think that opened doors to other organizations, to other Latina or multicultural sororities as well. There was a fraternity that was Latino-based. Then we came on the year after, or within the same year, I think. I don't remember the dates, but yeah, it was another venue to kind of get to know other women, because I didn't have a big sister. My mom was gone, so I didn't have that connection of an older role model, woman, a female role model to look up to. I didn't know how to put on makeup. I didn't know how to dress female. I was just doing my own thing, and so for me to be able to be a part of these groups, I started forming my identity as to who I was. At the beginning, I feel like I let a lot of people take advantage of me, of my motherly instincts, and I would cook for them. I would buy the food, cook for them, and clean up after them. So it took a toll. And when I joined the sorority, they're like, you need to stop doing this. So it kind of gave me that confidence to be like, no, if you want me to do this, you're gonna have to put something in,
Right.
or you're gonna have to wash dishes or something.
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
can't do it all. So each organization gave me something different to be able to be who I am and become who I am. So
Very cool. So then and that's a big step that happened during our
Mhm.
college years. I think
Yeah.
that was great that that sorority came to life. Like you said, not only that your sorority, Star Lambda Theta Nu, but also other sororities were able to come and join.
Mhm.
And now we're seeing years after, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to count them because
So
it's a lot.
yeah, I think. I mean, my chapter is a nationwide chapter, but here locally, we've been at UNK for, I think, a little over 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Well, I didn't want to count them. You just
it's been a
said,
while.
you just
Yeah,
said the number.
15 years. Yeah,
It's been
it's
a
been a
while.
while.
Yes. But 15 years of a sorority
Yeah.
and that supports itself, and
Mhm.
now calls themselves a home in the University of Nebraska
Mhm.
in Kearney. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and I honestly haven't really been active within the chapter, and I see some of their stuff that they post and the other organizations post, and I'm proud of what they're doing. Back in college, there was that rivalry when that other organization came on, but being out of college, you have a totally different perspective. It's like, okay, let that child go and now focus on the achievements that these women, as women, are creating. Most of them are family members, mothers, and wives, and business women, and everything. And that just makes me so happy to see them keep climbing the ladder.
Yes.
That sorority bias and all this stuff is long gone. I appreciate, I want to celebrate those women that continue to grow and who they are and achieving the things that they're achieving, because they're not just doing it for them, they're doing it for a whole community of Latina women that we have little people that look up to us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And can relate
Mhm.
and can say, Carmen did it. I can
Yeah.
do it too.
Yeah.
We have doctoras, we have administrators in the school systems, we have counselors. It is a wonderful thing to see once you graduate college, to be able to see all these wonderful women making such a big impact in the state of Nebraska, kicking butt and taking names, and it's really cool to see it. And hence why Courageous Mujer is here, to be able to celebrate and elevate our fellow Latinas throughout the state. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we graduated, you kicked butt, you got some ladies mix, you dance, and then you built a sisterhood. We're in career mode. what happened? What did you do right away? Because, it's interesting, you graduate and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this. This is my career. I'm going to do X and I'm going to go straight to it. And then sometimes that doesn't happen.
No. And that's exactly how it happened to me. I didn't go straight into TV or news. It took me 3 years after I graduated to get into it and get my foot in the door. I mean, I was applying. Don't get me wrong. I was working my butt off to apply for all these places, but nobody was taking in a Latina, which was heartbreaking. I applied to NTV several times and never got called until 3 years later. So it's just, after college, I ended up working at a hotel as a receptionist, overnight receptionist. So it was hard work. Schedule was not my thing.
Yeah.
Working overnights. I worked there for 3 months. It was something I did not care to do because I was missing out on family time, and it was hard. Then I had one of the girls in the sorority email me and be like, hey, there's this opening from migrant migrant agricultural office supervisor. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, not thinking about my background and my family's background in agriculture. So I was like, I'll go ahead and go for it. I mean, it pays more than what I'm making now and it'll be better hours. So I went for it. And it was hard doing that because they're grant-based. You know what it is. Grant-based, you can do certain things, you can't do certain things. And there was people coming into my office that needed help, needed financial help, or needed guidance, and I couldn't help them because they didn't meet a certain criteria. And then that just, I felt like, and I've always expressed this, where I felt like my wings kept getting cut. Like I wasn't able to fly. Right. And I'm like, this is not what I want to do, and I wasn't getting along with the people I was working with or I was supervising. So they're a new office director for another organization, the Multicultural Coalition, had started. And he kept coming up to my office first, to get to know each other. And then he kept coming up. He's like, when do you want to come work for me? And it's like, no. Like, what are you going to offer me? Like, what's different? Yeah. He's like, well, you can be my migrant advocate or my community outreach advocate, some title like that. And so I was like, what would I be doing? He's like, well, you'll be advocating for the community, doing resources and stuff like that. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I want this much salary wise though. I'm not going to go for something less. And so he eventually came back and he's like, I got it for you. Come work with me. And so I ended up leaving and going to the Multicultural Coalition. I was there for about a year when throughout the year, beginning was fine. I was doing events, doing things, but I wasn't really fulfilling that title, the, community outreach advocate. I wasn't really doing anything. I was more of a highly paid secretary is what it was. So I wasn't using my skills of any sort with what I learned in college. And then he eventually, I was eventually starting to do his work minus the grant writing. So I was doing his work, being at the office while he wasn't there. And then it came down to the point where I was just at my last straw. I was coming home crying because I didn't want to do this job. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't helping the community. And he comes to the office and he's like, you know what? I think you're costing me money. I'm like, okay, time for me to leave. Right. Right. I shouldn't have to deal with someone telling me I'm costing you money when I'm doing your work, So I ended up leaving that. At that time, that's when I got offered the job at NTV 3 years later. It was part-time. I was a booking producer. It was my way in my foot in the door. And so I started in news. That's how I got my foot in the door.
I just want to take a quick moment and do this for knowing your worth. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, when you said, I can't leave this job until you pay me this, is such a big step for us Latinas to even be able to say that, because we don't ever advocate on behalf of ourselves. We don't negotiate salaries. We're the least paid, if we want to look at data, research data, in regards to how much Latinas get paid. And then just putting that foot down y diciendo, okay, yeah, I'm done with this. I'm not happy here. You're not giving me what I need. I'm not able to provide what I think is necessary for our community and my role. And then you go to NTV, which is, like you said, a foot in the door. And I know all the work that you did through NTV. So tell us a little bit about how you started and then where it went.
Yeah, MTV, I started as a booking producer, booking guests for the Good Morning Nebraska show, as well as The Good Life and the Noon show. So for me, it was completely different. I didn't know what I was doing, but they basically, I think they hired me because I had a lot of connections in the community. And so I knew a lot of people. And I was basically calling people, hey, you want to be on the show? You have a good recipe? Come cook it on Good Morning Nebraska. Get your name out there. You have a restaurant. Let's get it promoted for free.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of how I was doing that. After 6 months, they saw the work that I was doing and they liked it. And so they hired me on full time. So full-time meant I could get benefits. When I was part-time, I was working the NTV job. I was living in Grand Island. So I was driving to Axtell, because out in the boonies, literally in the middle of a cornfield. So I was driving from Grand Island to Axtell and then driving back to work my 2 other jobs so I can, sustain myself. Mm-hmm. And then after I got full-time, that was a little bit more relaxed. I was still driving, making that financial investment of my vehicle and driving and time-wise. Eventually, they started training me to be a reporter and then being in front of a camera. After I did a cooking segment on Good Morning Nebraska, and they liked how I was on camera, my presence. So my news director knew that I wanted to do reporting. Mm-hmm. And he knew I wanted to do something in Spanish, because that was always my goal, to do something in Spanish. And so when I started anchoring, reporting, my first story was a bullying story, or not a bullying story. It was a New Year's festivity thing. And it was, if I go back and look at it, and so like, oh my gosh, poor little Carmen. It's totally different. But then eventually my story was an in-depth story on bullying, cyberbullying. And there was this one girl in Lincoln, I believe, where she got bullied to the point where she was almost killed on the side of a road. But the lawyer kept calling me, and I'm like, why are they calling me? I don't know. I'm barely starting. Mm-hmm. But they had, I don't know what it was, but they called me and I did that story. And then after I had enough anchoring experience, they eventually, Marilyn Barnett and my news director, Matt Wiesner, decided, hey, Carmen wants to do Spanish. Why don't we let her and do a Spanish webcast? And that way it's digital. We reach a different population with their own language, and we fulfill that gap. So we started doing that. That launched in February of 2014. I'll never forget that, because I even took a picture of myself. And that's the most genuine smile I probably ever have taken of myself. I was so happy that I had finally reached somewhat of my goal, of my dream, of having a Spanish newscast. So from there, it was called Sus Noticias al Instante, and I was a one-man show. I was producer, editor, anchor, reporter, everything that you can think of. I was that for that show.
And to think about it, almost 7 years later, I always, and I don't know, some people follow me because of my advocacy work, but it has been with this yelling and kicking and screaming of, where is our Spanish news? Mm-hmm. Where is our Spanish information? I mean, the pandemic was front and center for that. We did not get any Spanish information from our city, from our county. It was really hard to get it from our public health department. Mm-hmm. And you were so futuristic in your thinking, and NTV gave you that space to be able to do this. And you were you filled such a big gap. And a lot of our community follows to this day, mm-hmm. you and your career, because you gave us the news that mattered to us, from the general stuff to very intimate pieces about immigration, bullying, racial bullying, conversations about ICE raid. We've had a lot of conversations, you and I, in regards to those pieces. So I'm truly grateful that you were thinking about this 7 years ago, and you made it happen, and you filled this void that to this day, is still there, but we're seeing different people trying to follow your lead.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, I think it has to do with timing. They always say wait on God's timing. And I think for me, it was just that, because when I had, I mentioned I had previously applied for NTV, never heard a word back. And then when I started, it was because a new news director took the position. So I think, God was moving pieces at the right time, and that was my foot in the door with him. He saw something. And it wasn't just him. I mean, from him and Marilyn, from Carol and Ronnie, from the Good Life show, they supported me. They gave me that feedback, that push, motivation to keep doing what I was doing.
Right.
Because they understood the need that there was in the community. Eventually, Molly Baker jumped on as my director. So she's like, she would help me with camera angles. Why don't you do this, do that? And that was a huge support. If I could be wrong, but I think I was the first Latina anchor at NTV. I was the first probably Latina at NTV. And eventually after I started, because I even took, I kept looking around. I'm like, I don't see anybody that looks like me at NTV at all. And eventually my news director, I had expressed my feelings towards him. I'm like, why don't you hire more Hispanics?
Yeah.
We need them. And it would be great if I could get the help. And so he eventually hired a couple more Hispanics. One of them was my good friend, Anelina Cisneros. And when I was doing the live remotes for the Nebraska State Fair as a booking producer on scene, she would help me translate the webcast while I was over there. And I would just fix it up a little bit and then present it. Because I wanted our community to get the same treatment as our Anglo community. I wanted them to have access to the Nebraska State Fair, which eventually now I'm seeing that they're doing Nebraska State Fair this year. I feel bad that I was not a part of it, but so happy and excited that they included us this year. I was just like, wow, finally, it's coming to this. Finally, several years later, we're finally seeing representation at the Nebraska State Fair at a state level. And then I eventually heard with COVID, because I was getting a lot of messages when COVID hit. Where's our news? Why aren't you doing our news? We need you in Nebraska. And that was such I felt so heartbroken because I couldn't do it. I had moved. But then, other people started filling that void, including yourself, which I was so excited to finally see other people doing it. And our community didn't, wasn't left abandoned.
Right.
But then somebody messaged me from NTV, some of my former colleagues, that like, hey, the governor is actually doing press conferences in Spanish. I'm like, what? Like, this is mind blowing. I'm like, our state leaders are finally taking us into consideration. That's exciting. And
it is. Baby steps, one step forward, dicen, and then 2 steps back, because he's no longer doing them in Spanish anymore. So the visibility factor, we're not invisible, yet we get treated as though we don't exist, right? It is such a big piece in my mind with COVID, with meatpacking plants, as you know, what happened here in our community. And then just the health equity overall, absolutely no information in Espanol, where you can get your vaccine, where you can get your test, where you can get information or assistance. We're hurting. We don't have any financial assistance. How do we get it? We did it for UNK, so let me go ahead and do it for the news people out there in this world. If you're currently a news broadcasting channel, whoever entity here in the state of Nebraska, and you are not taking advantage of this opportunity and potential of having a Spanish newscast, webcast, whatever you want to call it, and not translate the information in Spanish, you are missing out on a market that is very profitable. So economically impacting, but life altering for a lot of our community that speaks Spanish. We have money. We've spent a lot of money here in the state of Nebraska. So if we want to, bring up the data again, we can. But it's so mind-blowing that to this day, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing a channel saying, you know what, we'll take Carmen's lead and we're going to do this. Yes, we see Telemundo out of Omaha. They've come back and forth to Grand Island a couple of times. We have a couple of radio stations, one in GI and one in Omaha. Abril and Mundo Latino kicking butt and taking names as well. Another courageous mujer in journalism. And then Doña Berta Garcia out of Buenos Dias, Nebraska in Grand Island. We have Adi Fernandez in North Platte trying her best with Las Mañanitas with her mameve. So saludos. It's just filling that gap. And you're seeing normal people like yours truly, trying their best, to fill a gap that's such a huge piece. You said it, I have to produce, edit, lighting, todo, and writing it and translating it, interpreting it, and going to places. It's huge. It is not easy. I never thought it is this hard, and like I have this partnership with my husband, and he's currently here listening to us to make sure our audio is good, and having the video and the lighting, todo, if I had to do that, I don't know if I would. I did it from my basement, the first time I recorded, and I recorded for like 3 hours yelling at Chris. I was like, no puedo. What do you want me to do? I can't do this. You want me to look at the camera? You want me to look at this? There's so much stuff,
Yeah, it's a technique for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So you have it down, and you had it down, and I'm super grateful for that time that you gave us here in Nebraska. And I know we got to keep it going. So let's talk a little bit about Univision. How did you get to Oregon?
Oh gosh, it was very challenging. I mean, it was hard to get into news, get my foot in the door. It was even harder to get into Spanish market. Even being Latina. Sometimes, they say, well, if you're born here, your Spanish is not good enough. It's like, well, I went to school to get my translation interpretation degree. Like, I have that. I have been speaking Spanish, since I can remember. But yeah, it was just a very challenging thing. I had applied, after, being at NTV, I kept advocating for a Spanish news channel. After many failed promises, it never happened. We even had a meeting with Fox Latino, with the general manager and Fox Latino and my news director. And then after that meeting, nothing ever happened. So it was very heartbreaking that we couldn't evolve or, that portion of my dream to launch it live for people that sit at home. We know that our generations, our parents still watch TV. And even though our platforms are changing constantly to digital, we still have the elderly, some generations are still very at home watching TV. And that's where our Latino population is. Even though I presented them with a list of businesses all over Nebraska that could contribute in marketing to make this profitable, to make it happen. It didn't go anywhere. So it kind of fell on deaf ears. There was only one, and I don't remember his position, but he was basically the manager of sales at NTV back then. He's now at NRG Media. But he advocated, he sent us emails every single time of showing us how the Latino community was growing. He is Anglo. And so for me to just have his support in those emails and pushing my news director, pushing the general manager, was something I appreciated so much, but it fell on deaf ears and never went anywhere. So I got to a point in my career where I'm like, I'm not growing as a reporter. I'm not growing as an anchor where I want to be, and not just English, but in Spanish. So I need to find other outlets. When I had just started the webcast, I got an email from Univision Kansas. I thought it was a joke. Not a joke to the sense where it was, less than what I expected. No, it was a joke because I didn't think I was good enough for them. I thought they were like up here. I was down here. And so I thought it was a scam. So I showed it to my coworker, Marilyn. I'm like, is this for real? Do you know this station? Because I'm like, I don't know if I can trust it. And so she checked into it. She looked at it. She's like, oh, yeah, they're like a super big market in Kansas. Like, you need to, I would have applied there. So you need to go for it. And when I contacted the news director, he's like, you need to send me a demo, a reel of your work. And I'm like, I just started. I don't have what you want. And so I worked towards that. And eventually in my mind, I think I put myself down because I didn't think I was valuable enough, where I didn't have what it took to be at Univision, because we all know Univision or Telemundo is like high up there. It's a huge dream. And I always knew I wanted to work for Univision. Since, you go back to my senior year in college, and that was, my speech, at awards night, I'm going to work for Univision. And I'm like, whoa, you are? It's like, yeah, that's my goal. And so, when I didn't go for Univision Kansas, years later, towards the point where I was getting frustrated, I wasn't growing, I started applying to all these stations. Then I was invited to be on a panel for media at a Latino Summit conference. And that's where I met Maya Sines. She used to work in Omaha for Channel 3, I believe. And she's like, oh, you should talk to my former news director. He works for Telemundo, Colorado. I'm like, oh, that would be awesome, connections. So we started that process, and eventually he ended up moving throughout my process of applying. He got transferred to California. So that kind of ended there. It didn't go anywhere. And then I applied at other places. I applied in Texas. I even called the news director's office in Texas for Univision, and they laughed at me on the phone and hung up on me. So like, okay, this is out of nowhere. So I felt very put down because I was at that point where I was like, I need to move forward. And so I saw that my company at NTV, Sinclair, who owns NTV, had a vacancy in Portland. I'm like, I'll never get it. And who knows if I'll even move up there in Oregon, I applied anyway. And then a couple months later, I get the call. Like, hey, we have a position for you. Let's talk. And we talked. They flew me out there, interviewed me. They liked my work. The news director liked my work because the producer, I guess, didn't know what to look for. So I got hired on. And that's at the point too where I was like, I need this much to be able to make it up there because cost of living is a lot higher. So I was always kind of pushing my bar for salary. And that's something I had to learn. And I'm still learning on how to negotiate what I'm worth. And there's times where I'm like, am I really worth that much? Will they even give it to me? Or do I need to go lower? So it's been a challenge, but I moved to Oregon.
For Univision, yes. So shout out to anybody and everybody that's listening from Oregon following your story. I think it's eye-opening, because in my eyes, it went boom, bam, boom. Carmen se fue a TV y luego se fue a Univision, you already had your ducks in a row and you were headed somewhere. But you hear all of these barriers, people that didn't believe, and then you still excelled. And I love, and we haven't had a chance in the podcast to talk with anybody else about salary and advocating for yourself to get paid what you're worth. So I really appreciate you bringing that up because we don't. I've had various times that I have had to, advocate on behalf of myself, and the person did or did not believe that I was worth it, future stories to come about this, because
definitely.
It's not, we have similar stories in regards to that. So you have gone to Oregon, you do Univision, your dream mujer. You shouted it out. You made it. Affirmation, dicen, you gave it to the universe. It came to you. How was Oregon for you? I followed your work over there. I know you were doing some hard stories over there too.
Yeah, I moved in a moment that none of us expected. I moved June of 2019. And the first month or so, I think it was the first month or 2 months, they didn't have me reporting just because I had told them, I was honest, open with the news director. And I told her, you know what, moving to a bigger city is kind of challenging for me. I'm in Nebraska where everything's like a minute away. Like it's not far. Yeah. And so that was a huge challenge. And I had never worked on editing on a laptop. I was always at a computer desk because my work didn't really require me to go far away and edit and come back. So she gave me time to get adjusted, which I'm eternally grateful for. And then I worked with a couple photogs because in a bigger city, you have a camera person. Well, if you work for the English station, Spanish, you're still on your own. So I was dealing with carrying a laptop, tripod, camera, microphones, everything to have with me for whatever I needed. And dealing with how to connect the computer to make sure my work got in there in time, the whole computer system, it was so challenging the first year. And then the way the producer wanted certain things, whether versus how I did things or how, training as a journalist do things. It was very different because he came from a newspaper background. So TV and newspaper, we may tell the same stories, but we tell them differently. And news, you get a minute and a half tops to tell your story. And that's one thing a lot of people are, when I interview them and it takes half an hour to an hour, they're like, and I tell them, like, it's only going to be a minute and a half. I'm like, how are you going to compact all that in a minute and a half? It's like, well, I take the best bites that tell the story, and that's that.
And if I may, that's a
yeah.
gift.
Yeah. It's very challenging.
Editing is a gift. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. But even then, because, he knew I wasn't born in Mexico. I wasn't, and it started to the point where he would tell me I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't going to make it. And it was kind of a downfall. It brought me down, and I'd have to pick myself up and keep going, because I had, agreed to a 2-year contract, and I was committed to making those 2 years. It was challenging, moving up there, mainly because I was leaving my family, moving away for the very first time. I mean, I had traveled for a week or two, and come back. This was like gone for 2 years, and that was that. Yeah. So it was very challenging.
Well, in the Spanish segment, we weren't able to dig in a little bit deeper, but Elvie, your sister, she was in our Spanish segment, and she asks, what's next? And I didn't ask you that in the Spanish segment, but you did touch a little bit about it. You and I can talk for hours. We can have segments for all days on all topics because we could.
It's a lot.
But we have a limited time and space now. I want to give this time to Elvie. What are you going to do? I know you're currently at a pause. That's how we said it in Spanish, una pausa. What should we expect in the greatness of Carmen Montes?
I'm not done yet with news. I feel like I still have a lot to give. But right now, like I mentioned, Oregon was a little bit challenging, not just because of what I was going through at work, but mental health, the rioting, protests. I was in one of them. Out of nowhere, I was kind of stuck in one of them. But also covering the violence, that has ensued in Portland. COVID was very mentally challenging. Having a sick parent at home, or a very delicate situation with his health, and not being able to be here for him or for my siblings, it was very challenging. But for me right now, I think I'm just enjoying family time. I needed the break.
Yeah.
So at first it was a month-long break, but it's extending itself a little bit for personal reasons. But I'm still gonna be looking for those stories. I just have to figure out how to do that, to continue advocating for our community, our Latino community, and seeing what's next. I haven't shut the door on anything, so we'll see. I know NTV wanted me back. I kind of shut them down. Mainly because Spanish wasn't on their radar anymore, or to the same capacity that it was before. And the offer wasn't there. They offered me what a new reporter was going to make after me having 9+ years of experience. I wasn't going to go back to that. There's just no way. I can't, professionally, I can't do that. And personally, I can't do that. So right now, my life as news professional career is on pause, but I haven't given up. I'm still moving forward. We'll see where God takes me.
Yes.
So we'll see.
Well, and just so you know, not only do I support you, but you have a community, a state that loves you and is super happy that you're home and taking care of yourself, because we need to. Yeah. And after living this pandemic life in Oregon, covering those really hard stories, hopefully you get some warmth and rest, while you're here, and a good welcoming, because you deserve it. And we're so excited for whatever, is coming up in the future. You deserve everything and more. I'm super excited for anybody, that gets to meet you and gets to take on your gifts, because that news, whatever outlet takes you on, we'll be blessed to have you and very lucky to have you.
Thank you. So, yeah. I'm hoping that, Nebraska wakes up and decides that they need something more permanent. We
need to shake them a little bit. Yeah. We'll continue. I only see greatness for us right now. So, si no, why not us? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We might as well.
Yeah. We're here already.
We got mics, we got cameras, we got lights, we're making it happen. So Very grateful to have you here. I'm going to give a little bit of time to see if I have any questions or comments. Other than that, I do want to ask you, for our young Latinas that are currently out there going through it, right? You and I have gone through it.
Mhm.
To some extent, we're still going through some of it.
Yeah.
Any motivational words, any thoughts, any guidance to them as they're going through some of their dark nights or some of their good times? What do you want to let them know?
Just never give up. They say keep dreaming bigger. If your dream's not scary enough for you, you need to dream bigger. And that's where I'm at. When you accomplish one dream, you just got to keep looking for your next dream. You keep making that grow. Never give up. There's going to be a lot of naysayers, a lot of people, even in our community. Unfortunately, in our Latino community, we see somebody excel and we want to bring them down to our, to the level. It's like, no, you got to keep pushing them forward, keep pushing them up. So never, find the people that are going to keep you going. Don't focus on the naysayers, because there's plenty of them, especially if you want to get into this business and news. Right. You're going to have a lot of critics. I have my share. Here in Nebraska, I had a lot of people, racist comments constantly on every story I made of that focused on refugees or the immigrant population or anything that had to do with Latinos. I constantly get comments. And I mean, if you go back on Facebook is just, you have those people that can't really tell you to your face what they're feeling. But we just got to open their eyes. There was one person, a mentor of mine, who told me, it's like, one of my parents saw a Hispanic laying under a tree, in the shade, taking their lunch break. And he said, hey, look at that lazy bum. That's why we have a lot of Latino, or our economies like that, because of the Latinos. And she looked at him and she's like, they're just taking a lunch break. They're not undocumented. They're working. They're just taking a break. Mm-hmm. They're not doing anything. They're not, robbing a store.
Right.
We have our bad apples, but we're good people. They got to open their eyes. We got to kind of help them get there. And, just for that Latina out there or Latino that wants to continue achieving a dream that they think is impossible because they've had people tell them no, it is possible. You just got to push them back.
Yes. Just shake it off, like Taylor Swift said.
Yeah, exactly. Bring the people that are going to be encouraging, that are going to be pushing you forward. And like they say, surround yourself with people that where you want to go. That's definitely a big piece. Mm-hmm. I tried surrounding myself, and I mentioned to you off camera, is that I'm in all these journalism Facebook groups. There's a lot of them out there. There's one for Latina journalists. There's MMJ, Facebook groups. There's people that want to get out of the business and go into other industries. There's a lot of help out there now that I didn't have back then. Mm-hmm. So don't give up.
Yes.
Keep pushing.
Take advantage of those groups then, even if it's a virtual support system, and take advantage of that. Well, I am patiently looking at my producer, editor, husband, and I'm going to see if we have any comments and or questions. Pero si seguimos, because we can. Mm-hmm. Well, I get any questions if we have any.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about música. Since we can, you're going to sing for me one of these days.
In the far.
What música did you used to sing, Carmen?
When I was in school, I sang the ballads, whatever, the music teacher basically gave you. But my music was Banda Machos, and Selena was a big one.
Yes.
I still remember being a kid and when she started going on Johnny Canales' show, because that's what we watched. And but yeah, music had always been there, and my goal was to be a Mexican singer, regional Mexican regional music is what I want to do. I wanted to do mariachi. I want to do all that stuff, but yeah, it's kind of long gone for now.
Was a big Selena fan. I am wondering what song. Which one was your best Selena song?
Probably oh gosh, it's like a Mexican version. I can't honestly right now on the spot. I can't think of it, but it was there's a lot of the ones that she sang with mariachi that are probably one of my favorites. She sang them beautifully, and I always try to imitate her. Another one was my Angelica Maria. I loved Angelica Maria's music. She was probably one that I could imitate pretty well when I was younger. I would even put little concerts for my parents. So I would put them in the room, and I'd have a makeshift microphone with my remote and sing to them while the music was playing in the background. And so, yeah, Angelica Maria, Selena, those were kind of my favorite. I did a lot of the Industria del Amor, like all those, oldies.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Los Rehenes. Oh my gosh.
Yes. I mean, you and
Yeah.
Beatriz, we
Yeah.
need to get a playlist together. I'm
Yes.
gonna send you guys a message and be like, we need an 80s, 90s
Oh gosh,
playlist to put together for Courageous Mujer, because
Yeah.
you guys are bringing me back to my mom and my dad and just
Yeah.
feeling this warmth of home,
Mhm.
with that la música. And
Yeah.
Selena, tú solo tú. With
That's
the
yes.
tú
Well,
solo tú. I
yeah.
sing that out loud all the time. My poor kids.
Yeah.
And then I always pull up the lyrics because I don't know them. But
Yeah.
I love that song.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. She sang that one with. No, there was one where she sang with another musician. I can't think his name, but yeah, that's one of my favorites.
The other one is Barrio Voice, but it's not with mariachi.
No.
Do you remember the one with Barrio Voice?
I
don't
know
remember
that
the
was,
name.
No, I can't think of it right now.
It's okay.
But
We'll
yeah.
get it in the comments.
I can visualize
Somebody's
the
going to
music
tell
video.
us. Yeah. Somebody's going to check us and be like, how do you not know these songs?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Definitely visualize the music video for sure. Wearing all black. I do
Yes.
remember.
Well, we do have 2 comments. One from Pilar. Pilar says, so happy to see Carmen in this space and listen to her story. Thanks, Carmen, for everything you did in Washington. And I'm not reading this county correctly, so I'm not going to say Clackamas.
Clackamas, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, thank
Clackamas
you.
County.
And then for Spanish-speaking communities.
Pilar, I think I might have interviewed her. I don't remember, but yeah, people in Portland and Southwest Washington are deep in my heart. I feel like I left a void there right now because, like I mentioned it, when I was down there, the team is very small. I mean, it was greater than what I was doing, but the team right now is only 3 people. I was the 4th. So, and I was the one out reporting the stories for, things that were going on. So I know there's that void and they're missing that, that person that needs to tell these stories. So Pilar, shout out to you. Thank you for following me. She's always encouraging me and sending me positive messages. So thank you.
Awesome. Saludos, Pilar. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Mariana Cruz.
She's my from the sorority.
I
So
know.
Hi,
Hola, Mariana. Carmen. She says, Carmen is tremendous, courageous, and a hardworking super mujer.
Thank you.
Saludos, Mariana. I'm so happy you're listening in. And heck yes, Carmen is and will continue to be.
I hope so anyway. I hope.
The Pilar needs to keep sending you messages,
yes.
right? Yes,
you
can.
A lot of encouragement. Yeah.
That's right. Well, gracias, Carmen.
Thank
Otra
you.
vez. No vamos a llorar en
No.
español. Sí, me puse a llorar un poquito, so I'm sorry about that. But thank you so much for your time. You gave us both a Spanish and English interview today. Hopefully we get to reach double, right?
Yeah, that's always the
nuestra
goal.
gente. Yeah. And then welcome back whenever you want to keep tapping into those issues that we want to talk about with Latinas within our community. Just let me know and you're more than welcome to come back. Even host, si quieres, you'll take the mic and I'll be like, oh, Carmen's taking this one.
We'll see.
Yeah. And then also, obviously, thank you to Humanities Nebraska, Dr. Katie White's Lexington Community Foundation for continuing to support our programming, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Saludos to my husband behind the mic, behind the screen. Yes. And then that's it.
Yeah.
Hasta la próxima, friends.
Thank you.
Again, you can find Courageous Mujer Podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Anchor. I'm your host, Gladys Godinez, y hasta la próxima.